Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning here at First Baptist Church. We do have a guest who will be with us for Sunday school, Sunday morning service, and Sunday evening, Pastor and Mrs. Riffel. And Mrs. Rich is also here with us. They traveled in from Japan with a brief stop in Hawaii, if I understand correctly, and also a brief stop in Florida. I think you said you went to Miami. So we'd like to welcome them this morning. He'll be up to talk shortly. Just keep Pastor and Mrs. Brown in prayer, and Steve, Carl, and Sarah as they'll be heading back here shortly from the trip up to Minnesota for Pastor's sister's funeral. And again, keep the Scardino family in prayer with Nancy's homegoing. We had the service yesterday. It was very touching. It was kind of a nice reunion, and visiting with Sal and his family, but keep them lifted in prayer. So Pastor Riffel will be having a presentation this morning, and I'm certain you have some question and answer time at the end if we're available. So without any delay, I'd like to welcome Pastor Rich. Pastor Riffel, I'm sorry. My son, Mr. Rich.
Good morning.
Welcome aboard.
Hi, thank you. Gozaimasu. Wow, he wasn't quitting when he said, I'll get right into it. So good to be with you this morning. We really appreciate this church. Since we were on furlough this last time, your church took our family on for support, and we were totally blown away. We were here on deputation. I know I'd visited once before, and then all of a sudden we got this check that started coming in. With so surprised about that, but the Lord's been good, so thank you so much for that. And of course, you've been supporting the Rich family for a long time now, and so we really appreciate that as well. It's a privilege to be your missionaries and be able to share this morning just a little bit about what's been going on in Japan and about culture. Maybe some of you don't know us very well, so I just want to share a little bit of a testimony this morning before we get into this. And so I actually grew up in a Christian home, one of four brothers, or five brothers altogether, but I'm one of them. And in Japanese, it's confusing because in Japanese we say five brothers. But in America, we say I have four brothers, but you can include yourself when you're in Japan. So we're still getting acclimated to America and speaking English all the time and hearing English and all that. So just bear with us, if you would, this morning. But I had the privilege of, when I was 9 years old, accepting the Lord as my Savior, best decision I ever made, and I never regret it. I dedicated my life to the Lord when I was 13 at camp, and the Lord worked in my heart to be a missionary. I surrendered to that when I was 15, and never regretted that. Although for me, I never thought I would be in Japan. I never thought I would go to a foreign country at all. I was talking to some men this morning. Actually, my mother was from Canada and grew up on a farm. My dad would grow up on a farm, and we like living in the countryside, and I love that. I'm not much of a city person either, so I'll just live in the countryside somewhere. I'll have a job. I'll live there the rest of my life. I don't need to go anywhere or do anything. I just very much sit in the background kind of guy. I have a twin brother, Matthew, and so he was always the one doing the talking and in the foreground, and I said, I'll just, in the background, I'm fine. I'll just serve in the church in the background, no problem. I don't need to come up and speak or do anything like that. So just the opposite of, everything that I thought. God wanted me to go to Japan, and I thank the Lord for that. And it's been adjustment, to say the least. But God actually used the Rich family. Pastor Rich was sent out of our church in Plymouth, Indiana, as a missionary. And so we got to know them through furlough every now and then, coming back to our church. And there was a situation, I don't remember what year it was, back probably 2002, that he got a disease on his leg called necrotasis and fasciitis, and he almost died from that, and he had to stay at our home church for an extended period of time. And through that time, I got to know their family, also got to know April, of course, and God was leading us together, but I didn't know it at that time. And through that, we went on a missions trip to Japan and had the opportunity to go there. And so already knowing I was going to be a missionary, I was praying about Japan. And really what I was praying is, Lord, make it clear that I'm not called to Japan, if that's your will. And if it is your will, make it clear that I'm supposed to go there. But I really didn't think I was going to go to Japan. Well, I had several reasons in my mind. So I didn't like fish. And Japan they eat fish a lot. They eat it for breakfast, or they'll eat it raw on a stick, or, all kinds of this sushi and things. And I thought, there's no way. I didn't like rice. In Japan, they eat rice for every single meal. There was the culture difference, the language. Have you seen the Japanese language and all these little squiggles and things? And I took Spanish in elementary school, and I hated it. I thought, no way, I'm gonna learn that. And I took German in high school, and I hated that. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever gonna learn a foreign language. I'm not that kind of missionary. I'll go to an English-speaking place. So I had all these ideas. Mine, of course. But when I got to Japan, Lord, the Bible is so clear when it says your eye affects your heart, and when you see people that don't know anything about God and never been to a church, never seen a Bible, talked to people, never even heard of Jesus Christ before, and it broke my heart. We were with a missionary, Brother Rogers, went to Japan after World War II when MacArthur asked for missionaries. And he's passed away now. I believe last year he just passed away, but was in Japan for over 70 years. And he took us to different areas, and we were passing different cities as we were going down the expressway, and there's a big city over here and a big city over there, and I kept asking him, do you know a missionary over there? Is there a church or work there? And he was like, nope, there's nobody there. And we were going more to central Japan at that time, and he kept saying, no, there's nobody there, nobody there. And that really opened my eyes to, well, how are they going to hear? Who's going to tell them if somebody doesn't go? And that really broke my heart. And then I was reading in my devotions when I came back from that trip in Psalms 37. A lot of people point to verse 4, but I was actually looking at verse 3, and the Bible says, so shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. And that was exactly what the verse that I needed. And saying, Michael, that's where I want you to go. Dwell there, and guess what? I'm going to feed you. You don't have to worry about the raw fish or anything like that. Does anybody like raw fish? Is the sushi lovers in here? Couple, few of you. Okay. Well, the sushi, if you do get sushi in America, it's nothing like Japan. The best sushi is over there. And it's a lot cheaper, believe it or not. Just down the road from our house, we have a restaurant, and our whole family can eat there pretty much as to our heart's content, and maybe $30 for all of us. And so very, very reasonable. And we took our mission director, John O'Malley, there, and he said, that's the best sushi I've ever eaten. And he's been all over the world. But anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent. So God said, I'm going to meet your need. And he does, and in every way. I still don't know Japanese like I need to, but they say if you go to Japan as a missionary, you're going to learn Japanese the rest of your life. That's just ongoing study, because their language is so hard, and most Japanese realize their language is so hard. But I had a privilege, of course, my wife grew up in Japan, so she knew Japanese already, so that was a huge blessing. So that's my testimony. I surrendered there when I was 19 to go to Japan. I went to Pensacola Christian College, studied there, and then we started deputation. Of course, Lord was bringing us together through that time, got married, started deputation, and now we've been in Japan the last 12 years, and this is our third furlough that we're coming, and so we just got back a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to be traveling to churches all the way to July, and then flying back to Japan. And so let me go ahead with the presentation here. Just some pictures. Didn't have time to put a video together. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So this time we're just sharing PowerPoint. But of course, the Rich family, this is Pastor Rich. He passed away in 2017. And the Lord worked it out so that I could continue their work. And we were working together. And so it's just been a great blessing. And then Mom has continued to work with us. She's been faithful in the ministry and missionary in Japan now for over 50 years. And actually a missionary for 53 years, over 53 years, and now in Japan 50 years. So it's a huge milestone for her. But she's like, well, what else am I going to do, right? Lord's called me, and the Lord called her when she was 13 years old to be a missionary in Japan, and she's been faithful to that. And so I appreciate those people that have been faithful to the Lord and what the Lord has called them to do. And we could not do our work without her. She's such a great blessing. Japan as a country, maybe you've heard statistics before. This is the number of evangelical Christians, 0.3%. And I'm not exaggerating that in any way. In all likelihood, it's probably less than that. Really in complete darkness, just like 2 Corinthians talks about how Satan blinded the minds of them which believe not. And they are certainly blinded there by Satan. The religions, of course, Buddhism and Shintoism, the main religions there, pretty much 85% of Japan claims those religions, and actually a good percentage of those will, in a way, follow both of those religions, just because of the different festivals and things that they have. A lot of Japanese, they'll get married Shinto, and they'll die, and their funeral will be a Buddhist funeral. And so that's very common. They just kind of mix and just take whatever they want and follow that. But by in general, a lot of Japanese don't consider themselves religious, even though they'll go to the shrine and they'll pray there, or they'll do different things, very religious customs that they have. One of the customs we have in our area, not everywhere in Japan does this, but in August there's a festival called Obon, and during that festival, it's called the Festival of the Dead. They believe the spirit of their dead ancestors roams the earth, and during the Obon time they are calling their ancestor to come back, and they'll burn incense by their graves, by their driveway, and we'll see it all throughout our city. They're burning it and having a little ceremony where they're calling their ancestor spirit to come back. Some of them will actually take a cucumber and they'll put 2 chopsticks in the cucumber to make it look like a donkey, and put a little string around the neck there, and they'll go to the grave site where their ancestor is, and they'll drag the cucumber back to their home, believing their ancestor the spirit rides the donkey back to their home. And then during that week, they believe the spirit is there with them in their house. And at the end of the time, they say goodbye to the spirit. And it's really a sad, dark time in Japan. And so instead of this time, we've actually have camp at our church. And so we want to help the Christians there, because it can be a very difficult time for them with their families, especially all the different customs and things they have. So most of the Japanese religion is not necessarily where people go to a church necessarily to learn so much about it, or to study what does Buddhism teach and all this. And most Japanese, they're not really interested in that. But all the festivals that take place throughout the year, they'll go to those. It's like going on holiday for them, or going to 4th of July, or having a Thanksgiving celebration. It's like our American holidays to them they're all the Buddhist festivals that they have are Shinto festivals. And so that's what they do. And they don't know any different. They'll go to the graveside, burn incense on sticks like these. They have prayer sticks that they'll put up. All kinds of different rituals. They're very superstitious people. But of course, we know that's just a stick. There's no God there. But the Japanese, they often think there's gods, millions of different gods that they follow. I was talking to our chiropractor one time and about the differences of Christianity, and he was like, well, we believe everything is God. And so he was like, this mountain over here is God. And they have a God shelf in their home, and a lot of businesses as well, and they have a little shrine thing on there. And he said, this is God right here. And I was like, no, that's a piece of wood. That thing's not going to do you any good. You can try to pray to it, but it's not going to answer you. And so I'm so thankful. The privilege of being able to grow up in a country like this where there are churches to go to. If somebody wants to know about God or wants to seek God, they can go. Now, of course, there's churches that aren't good. I understand that. But you do have one. And so many places throughout Japan, and our area in particular, and we're in the center of Japan. I'm kind of jumping around here. But our area in particular, there's quite a few cities, no churches, no gospel Baptist churches, of course, independent Baptists, of course, and, to speak of. And so we need missionaries. And so pray for that. Pray that God would send more works, so people to us that can start new works. This is just going through 1973. The Riches came to Japan. Of course, April was just a little baby that time. And they started a church in Tokyo. Maybe if you know the Riches before, you can remember some of these things from a long time ago. And the Lord really blessed that work. They have now nationalized that church. And back in 2003, and that's the same time we went on a missions trip that I went on when I was 19, a missions trip to Japan. And this was part of the missions group from our church, Grace Baptist Church in Plymouth, Indiana, and starting a church there. And actually the Lord used that trip as well to work in the Riches' heart to go to another area of Japan to start a new church there. And so that's what they did here, Faith Baptist Church. This is what Brother Rogers, who I was speaking about earlier, helping them to get to this new area. And so where we are now, this is the city of Tokyo, follow it northwest to Saku, and it's the most central city in Japan. So we're not just centrally located, but really compared to a lot of the urban places in Japan, very much the heart of Buddhist and Shinto culture right there. And so the people that we meet, oftentimes not very friendly toward us. Americans are just like, what are you doing here? And or I'm scared of you. And really they are. They are afraid of us as Christians. There's a big, their mindset toward Christians is often, that's dangerous. You need to stay away from that. And they'll even, we heard last year, a young lady in our church, the school system was talking to April afterward, that they were teaching us in the school, there's this textbook and it talks about Christianity, and it says in there that we believe that we bow down to a golden cross, and that's the God that we follow. And she said the teacher was saying it's dangerous and we need to stay away from it. And this was right here in our town. And we're thinking, oh no. But our society in general, even in America, it's getting further and further away from teaching the truth and the school system. And when they can reach the young people, it makes it so much harder to reach them. But we thank the Lord that we have seen fruit, and God has been blessing because the gospel still works. And mankind, even though they follow all kinds of religion, that's not the answer. Jesus Christ is the answer. This is our city, Saku City, all surrounded by mountains. Beautiful area there in Japan. We have a mountain on the north side of us called Mount Osama, It's a volcano, active volcano. Pretty much every day there's smoke spewing out of the volcano, and that's actually a good sign. They say if it stops spewing smoke, then it's building up pressure, and so you got to be careful. And so we've had a few eruptions, not major eruptions, but just little ones happen while we're there. But we're not afraid of that. God's there. He's protecting us. That mountain is not the God. This is a man on the left here, Mr. Ishii. God led the Riches to meet them when they went to Japan, and he's been a huge blessing. He's not saved yet. We've still been praying for him, to be saved. But the Lord allowed him to become real good friends with Pastor Rich. He introduced a house for them to stay in. This is the house here. It was just a couple blocks or a couple houses over from his house, so he could come by every now and then and drink coffee and talk to Pastor Rich, and he did that many, many times. And he actually went with us to the funeral of Pastor Rich, and all the way up several hours away to the place that he was buried. And he's had many conversations with him, and he knows Christianity is true. He knows the gospel. He actually gave it on. He was on a phone call once with Pastor Rich and he told his friend this is what his friend was going through some trouble, and so he gave him the plan of salvation on the phone to his friend and said, this is what you need to do because God can help you. And then he got off the phone and said, how did I do? And he said, well, you did great, but you need to get saved yourself. You need to do what you just told your friend to do. But he's, like many Japanese, they feel like they just can't do that because of their obligations with their family. It's such a community-oriented people. The bonds with their family is so strong that oftentimes they don't want to. They said, I want to do that, but I just can't because of my family. So we can do all we can, but we just need prayer. I think the brother this morning, told me that every day, every morning, he prays for us. And boy, that means a lot, brother. Because we can't reach him with the gospel. God's got to do the work. And so I appreciate that so much. Thank you for praying. They started the church in their house there in 2006. God blessed. They had some people getting saved and following the Lord, getting baptized. Back in 2011, the Lord allowed them to start renting this building, and we came that next year in 2012. And so this is actually a nice area. We can have a parking lot, and although next door there's a jazzercise that moved in, and they're often trying to steal our parking spaces, but Mr. Ishii owns this building, and he's renting the first floor to us, and the second floor there is his office building. And so here's the inside when they first got the building, and using that space, and then of course our family came the next year. And so we've been trying to reach our city many of the different ways, and one thing that we can do in Japan is we can put track right in their mailbox, and that's not illegal to do. And so we just try to flood all of our city. We've tried to give them a track and an invitation to our church, and also we passed out John and Romans that we're trying to do. Many Japanese, even though they'll be hesitant to talk to you about religion, or sometimes even if you try to hand them something, they'll just say, oh no, I'm Buddhist, it's okay. But if they receive something, they're 99.5 or 9 or something, really high literacy rate. So everybody reads there, and they like reading things. And so oftentimes they'll read it even though they might not receive it from us. So if we put it in their mailbox, oftentimes it'll get read. And so we're trying to do that still. We've got about 75% of our city, maybe 80% done right now. And so if you want to come to Japan and just put some things in the mailbox, we'd love to have you come. That's a good way to reach people and be a witness there. And so our church does that. The Lord opened a door for us to teach English as well. It's very hard to get an inroad to Japanese people sometimes. And so English has been a great way to do that. And of course, we teach Bible as well with the English. And we make sure they know ahead of time, we're gonna teach you Bible, but if you're okay with that, we'll teach you English as well. So, and so we've had some families that have joined, and quite a few children that they love the Bible time. They love coming and hearing the stories. And we've had some children get saved through this ministry, and also some mothers as well. And so the Lord's been so good with that, and we thank the Lord for that ministry. This is a family. I don't want to talk about everybody, but these 3 children here, their family started coming to our church, let's see, maybe 6-7 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but it was a great privilege to be able to see them. Their mother is actually Scottish, and the father is Japanese, but they were happy to find our church, and all 3 of their children were saved while attending our church. And this is another picture of when Pastor Rich was still alive. Some folks come in, and they're the Keto family and other folks as well. This is the Keto family. They were getting their marriage vows renewed while they were in Japan. Marriage is something that I noticed somebody passed out this morning, this church connection thing. And she says, oh, not a lot of people read this, but she was passing it out. I was like, what? Huh? And I started reading it. This is a great piece of paper. I don't know who makes it or puts it together, but there's a lot of good information in there. So please go ahead and read that. But it's about marriage and the relationship there. In Japan, there's a lot of, it's a different culture for a lot of Japanese. There's not a lot of love in the home. Husbands and wife don't tell each other, I love you, or they don't show a lot of affection in any way. I could go on and on about that, but trying to teach them the biblical way of love and how to show love one to another like God does for us. And the sacrificial love, it's so important. And so we need good families in Japan. And so they went through this ceremony. It was a great time in our church. This was just another Japanese lady we were able to baptize. Her name is Hikaru, and she actually went to Pensacola Christian College. We introduced her there. She wanted to go to America and learn English, and she met a man there, got married, and was living in Texas for a while, and now she moved back to Japan. And so we have all kinds of different people that we can minister to, sometimes for a short time, sometimes for a long time. But it's a great honor to see people saved and follow the Lord. And then here, of course, Pastor Rich went to heaven 2017, and we continued the work there in the ministry at the church. This is another family, the English family, that their daughter was saved. Her name is Kao. And she was so excited to know about the Lord. She had heard a little bit from a friend of hers, and she wanted to know more. And she was always excited about English anyway. But she came one time to our English class and says, please tell me about Jesus. I want to know more about this. And we gave her the gospel plan after our class, and she's like, that's what I want to do. I want to follow Jesus. And I want to trust Jesus. And she was like, she was there with her mother, and you're going to do it too. And you're going to pray with me too. And she's like calling her brother over, you're going to come and pray with us as well. So she was so excited about it. And we did pray that day. I think the mother did pray with us as well, but I don't think she quite understood, and when maybe was kind of doing it because of her daughter. But the sad thing, and what we face so much in Japan as well, something to pray for, is children receiving the Lord, and yet their parents later not wanting them to come to church, or not wanting them to outwardly show their faith to other people. And so this is kind of the situation here. The father, they got home, and we got a text the next day saying that she couldn't come to church, and that they were just going to be quiet Christians and not, they didn't want to speak out. And it's so sad. Here she was so excited to follow God and receive Jesus as her Savior. But so we just pray for this. And, who knows what God might do later. She's going to grow up and how God will work in her life. But continuing sowing seed and trying to reach them. But I praise the Lord for her salvation. It was a wonderful time. I can't share everything that's happened the last 12 years or so, but since we came back last time to Japan, 2019 was our last furlough. Just after that time, we met this family. April actually was in a grocery store, and just going there and saw this little baby that they were holding, and went up to the baby. Oh, it's so cute and everything. And they got talking, and Shoko-san is the lady here. We call her Sarah, is her English name. She's actually Taiwanese. You would never know it talking to her. Her Japanese is so good, and she looks almost Japanese. But she actually grew up kind of Christian in her home, but she herself has kind of thought she was always Christian, but she didn't know of a church to go to. She had visited one church in Japan that was close to her area, but that church, she said, I don't know what they were teaching. They weren't teaching the Bible. And so she stopped going there, but she didn't have a church to go to. So when she met April, she right away started coming to our church and bringing her daughter Lisa. And then through process of things, she wanted to become a member of our church, and we have classes for that to take. And we realized she hadn't been baptized as well, and so she needed to get baptized. And then as we were dealing with her, realized that she actually never prayed to receive the Lord as her Savior. And so we were able to do that this last term, and she was baptized, became a member, and she's been so helpful there in Japan and the work there. And so we're still praying for her husband, if you could pray for him as well, and her daughter Lisa to be saved. This is Kentaro. His name is Kentaro, and he is kind of an atheist in a way. Just doesn't follow anything, doesn't believe in anything. But he has come to our church for quite a few times for some of our special events and things. And so we just continue to reach out to him and know that the Lord's going to work in his life. So please pray for him. Another family that started coming this last term was the Okada family. Actually, it's kind of a long story, but they were in the Philippines for a time, and he was in Japan. He went back to the Philippines, and they had some children. They got married, and God brought him back to Japan, and Rose actually came to Japan, his wife, and she had received the Lord there in the Philippines. Just before they came back, she was baptized with her daughter Samantha as well, and they've just been a huge blessing to our church, and they have a lot of children now. They had twins while they were there in Japan, and so this is their family now. The husband, we've still been praying for him. He's been a struggle, kind of here and there coming to church, but Rose and their family have been really faithful. And we pick them up. They don't have a car, so we pick them up every Sunday, bring them to church. And even while we're gone here in Japan, we've got another member of our church going to, they go to our house and spend the night at our house, and then they take our car to go pick them up and their family, because they don't have a big enough vehicle. They have what they call a K car in Japan. All these little cars. There's a lot of little cars in Japan. Not like this America, all these big, huge trucks and everything going by. It's been a little bit of adjustment, but so anyways, the K car can only hold 4 people. It's by law, but so we have a bigger car and we bring in people all the time. But she's been a huge blessing, and so we're still praying for this family. Samantha, of course, had not been baptized, but she had been saved, and so we had the privilege of baptizing her. Also with another man. This is a Brazilian man, Luis. that came to our church, and he got saved, and I started discipling him, and he was baptized. He actually moved away a couple of years ago because of his work, and so he's not in our area anymore, but we thank the Lord for the opportunity to minister to him. This is Mom teaching our Sunday school class there, and Abigail actually just started this last term as well, helping in the classroom as well and teaching the kids. And so she's been able to see Mia, which is the next oldest daughter, receive the Lord. And she hasn't been baptized yet. She's afraid of the water. So she's still young, but we're praying for her to grow. And then the girl on the left there is Anna, and we're praying for her salvation as well. She's old enough to understand, I think, now, but still hasn't made that decision. So if you could pray for them, I'd appreciate it. This is a barbecue outreach you have. I just threw some pictures in here to give you an idea of some of the things that we do at our church. I'm sure you do different outreaches here as well, just the same way we do it in Japan, although it might be in Japanese, but still try to have a lot of fun and also share the gospel. A lot of Japanese don't want to come to your church. They don't even want to go through the door. We've had people that they'll walk up to the door, but they will not go inside, or they'll stay in their car, or meet you at the door, but not go inside. And for some, it's a stigma there. It really is a fear in some way. So we have different outreaches we do. We take it out of our home. This was at the Rich's home while they were still renting that place. And we would invite neighbors and things. And we've seen a lot of different people come to those times and be able to share the gospel there. And so we're all getting together and sharing it together. My Japanese, of course, the first time I actually preached in Japanese without anyone's help was at my father-in-law's funeral. And so for me, I had a lot of interruptions when I was learning Japanese and trying to learn, still trying to learn. But so during that time, I didn't have all the language training that, official language training that I needed. But God just says, okay, now you got to do it. And so April actually helped a lot with interpreting at first. And so thank the Lord for that. But God's allowed us to be able to learn the Japanese language, and Abigail knows it as well, too. She's taken schooling with Japanese as well, so God's been good there. This is another family, I think, with a barbecue outreach at our house. This week started having camp services there at our house as well. These two ladies, maybe you've seen those pictures in our prayer letter before, Ikegami-san and Reiko-san. And Mrs. Rich and the Riches were teaching them English and Bible for a long time. I think even before we came to Japan, they were teaching them English. And it just, for Japanese, a lot of times it takes a long time for them to come to the place where they will accept Christ. But both these ladies made a profession of faith. Eiko-san, actually, she had always been not able to come to church. She was working on Sundays. She had a job at a hotel and was very faithful to that job, but always complaining about different problems and things at the workplace and things. And Mom was always saying, you should come to church, inviting her. And then one day she just said, again, Eiko-san's complaining of the things at her workplace. And she says, well, you're past retirement age, you're well-to-do, you don't need that job, you could just quit your job and come to church. And she said, okay, I'll do that. And so that's exactly what she did. And she started coming, and up to that point, she was a believer, but she hadn't grown at all in her faith because she hasn't been under God's word. Like you're coming this morning, come to Sunday school. That's so important, being under God's word. And so she started growing, and she's still growing now, and we thank the Lord for that. We're praying that she'll get baptized. For the Japanese, it's a very hard decision to get baptized. Even if after they become saved, the baptism is a clear line where for their family, it's like you're crossing the line. Now you get baptized into something and they see, oh, you're actually serious. And so some Japanese, when they get baptized, their family won't have anything to do with them anymore. If they're younger, sometimes they even kick them out of the house, saying, you're no longer my son, no, I'll disown you, that kind of thing. So it's a big decision. And so it's been hard, it's been a struggle for her. The Japanese, like I said before, they have a God shelf oftentimes in their home. They have a special piece of furniture called a butsudan that they have, and a lot of times they'll put pictures of their ancestors on there and different ornaments and things, memories and things that they have. They'll oftentimes take some water, a glass of water every day, put it there like they're giving it to their ancestor, feeding them. Sometimes they'll put some fruit or vegetables. The richest neighbor, every day the wife would put some food there on the God shelf. And every day her husband would go and eat it and drink the water. And he told the riches, don't ever tell her. Don't ever tell her I do it. She really thinks that the gods there are taking it. But it's so sad. But anyways, I got off on a tangent. So Eiko-san, Lord willing, she's agreed to get baptized, but we have some classes that we go to help them understand what baptism is, and also to be able to join our church. And so when we get back to Japan, she'll be taking those classes. And so we're looking forward to that. This is another picture, just some of the English people we've been able to teach. This was right before we left Japan at Christmas time, and had them at our home at a special Christmas event there. And then these are some more of our English families that we've been able to reach with the gospel and share the Christ with love with them. Sometimes you can see where the children they love to hear it and receive it, but then they'll look back at their parents, and sometimes it just kind of turns the switch back off again. And so just pray. Some days where you can see where the Lord's really working in their life, and where we feel freedom, and then other days we just, the Spirit there is not there to work. So just continue to pray for that. I really appreciate it. Our church in Japan had the privilege this last year. This is a lady missionary, Japanese missionary, going to Taiwan as a missionary. And so our church was able to help her and start supporting her. And so our church in Japan has two missionaries that we support. One is the family in Hawaii. Brother mentioned we're going to Hawaii, and you might think, oh, a missionary's going to Hawaii, he's going on vacation. But we did have a supporting church there. Our missionary was in Hawaii as well. So that church was supporting April and I as missionaries, and then our church in Japan was supporting that Japanese missionary to go to Hawaii. So interesting situation there. We did have another church supporting us in Hawaii, but then that church closed, so we weren't able to visit there. But we were able to send her. So she's actually learning Chinese now from Japanese and trying to minister to the people there. So it's a great privilege to be able to do that. Last summer we had an intern. This is Kayla Shank. She's went to Ambassador Baptist Bible College, and she's finishing up her senior year this year. And while she was on the internship for 2 months, the Lord called her to Japan. The Lord had actually, I believe, called her before that. She came to us with these verses about Japan. I think it was 7 different verses, 7 different passages. And she was talking about how God spoke to her, and she had written Japan there in her Bible. But then she was saying, I just don't know if God's called me to Japan, and so I'm praying about it. And then she'd share another verse about Japan, another verse about Japan. And I was like, well, most missionaries, they have 1 verse or maybe 2 verses that's God's. And you got 7 verses about Japan. I think God's doing something here and directing you. And so she's like, yeah, you might be right. And she prayed about it. And the next few days we heard back from her, and she said, I think the Lord's called me to Japan. So I was so excited to hear that. But pray for her as well. She's, Lord willing, going to start deputation next year. And so raising support to get to Japan is not easy. But the cost of living has it's not gone down, but it's not gone up as much as it has here in America, which it's been a big shock to us to come back here, and the cost of things and everything has just skyrocketed. But the Lord can meet her need, and the Lord will direct her. She wants to come work with us. We've had two missionary families that the Lord worked in their heart to become missionaries. They started deputation, and then they have not been in Japan for different reasons. I know Japan, it's called the graveyard of missionaries, and I've seen that firsthand. We have. It's a difficult field because of how the people are. They're hard to reach, but I believe the devil doesn't want missionaries there either. And so both these families, we had the Derry family, they were on deputation for 5 years. They had about 85% of their support, and then for different reasons that I'm not going to get into, but they stopped their deputation. And then we just had the White family as well last year. Were actually moved to Japan, and they were going to do language school with us, and then her parents, her father was near death, and so they said we need to go emergency trip back to the States. When they got back to the States, they realized the mother was not doing well, and his parents as well were not doing well, and they needed someone to take care of them full time. And so they as well said, we need to move back to the States. And so we helped them last October to move their things back to the States. And that was just heart-wrenching. Here we're praying and praying for missionaries, and we need missionaries in Japan. And I know God works in different ways, but it's sad. And a lot of the missionaries that I do hear now that are coming to Japan, it's basically to replace those who either the missionary died or the Japanese pastor died, and then the church doesn't have a pastor anymore, and so they need someone to come and fill in that work. But we're like, well, what about these other cities that we need? In our prefecture, we want to send some people to our next city, to Ueda next to us, Komodo next to us. I can tell you Nagano City, which is the capital of our state. It's only got one Baptist church in it, plus our city, and then one other city in our whole state that I know of that has Baptist church. Only 3 cities. And so we've had people contact us. The southern part of Nagano Prefecture had someone, actually an American, moving to that area for a job or something, and they contacted me saying, do you know of a church in this area, good church in this area? And I was like, there is no church there. You're going to have to go at least an hour and a half and go on the expressway and to get to a church. And so it's sad. And so pray for these areas, and pray that God would send someone there and that they would be able to reach it. And we pray for Kayla and her work in the future, Lord willing. What else can I say? There's so much. This is another event we just had last October, and a fall festival that we weren't able to have the barbecue, so we kind of switched it to a fall festival that year. And we had a new lady and her daughter come. The lady on the left here, her name is Adelina, and she's actually Filipino. Her married a Japanese man, and her husband passed away 2 years ago. And so she was still very much broken about that and things. Found out about her church, started coming, and has been pretty faithful to it. And so we thank the Lord for that. She still has a lot of growth to go. She came from a Catholic kind of background, and so we weren't even sure she was saved or not, or what her situation was. April was able to talk to her actually this Sunday right before we left, and confirm that she did know the Lord. She wasn't trusting in her works or trusting in Mary, and the Lord had protected her in the many things, and some of the things in Catholic she had rejected. But we're praying for her daughter as well, Yurino, to be saved, and for her other son as well, for him to be saved. And so we thank the Lord for the opportunity to reach them. Last year was extremely busy for us as a church. Not only the events and things we had, but we've been struggling to find a place that we can have different classrooms and things in. Up until now, it's all been just one room, very small room, probably it'd fit on your stage here. And we were having all our classes, the children's classes and this, junior high classes and adult Sunday schools all together at once. So everybody's talking, and it's kind of chaos. And everybody's trying to get louder and to hear each other. And we couldn't have a junior church because of this. And so we've been praying for a long time what to do about the situation. And so we finally came to the conclusion, well, we can't find anywhere else to meet. What's a reasonable price or anything. So let's just divide up our room that we have. So even though we got a kind of a smaller area now, we put up a wall in the back, we put up some classrooms on the side, this wall here on the side, and divided that into 2 classrooms that we can use. So because of this, we also started junior church, and that's been really nice. We want to be able to reach these young people with the Lord. That's the key to reach in Japan, is through their own people. And so we put up a kitchen. Actually, at the same time, we were transitioning because Mom had her house that she's been using for a long time and renting, and then the Whites were taking over that house. And then the White family, they were leaving Japan, and so we had all these things there that we had to deal with, and Mr. Ishii said we need to take out all the kitchen cabinets. They had brought a container from America with all these nice kitchen cabinets back 2006, what year was that, 2008, 2009, something like that. So we tore all the cabinets out, and they said, wait, why don't we put those in the church? So that's exactly what we did. Put all the cabinets in the church, and we had the new wall there to be able to do it on because of the renovation here. So we finished that up in end of November of last year, and so this is the other side of that wall, and we had a nursery room, and then this is our worship room, I guess you could say, the main auditorium part of the service. And so it's been really nice to have this area. Before, if we wanted to do any kind of counseling, pretty much the whole church could hear because we're all just in one room. We're not going to go to the toilet room. That's all we have is it's a toilet and a door, and that's it. So we can't go there. So, but anyways, we praise the Lord that we're able to have that space. And then another door that opened up last year was a possibility for this land that you see here. We took a picture here because the Lord allowed us to start renting this land, and it's actually connected with our property, our house that we own, and so we can have parking through that and do different events here on this property as well. And it was only for 5,000 yen in Japanese, which right now it's like $30 some dollars a month to rent. So very cheap and affordable, and Mr. Ishii, who actually started renting that to us, he wants us to be able to eventually buy it, and we're like, yeah, we want to do that too. We've always wanted to be able to buy in Japan, but the problem is the Japanese, the way it works is they have to have someone who's a co-signer, who's Japanese, who has to agree to this loan, and in order to get that. And so that's a very hard thing to get in Japan, and someone to be able to do that. And Mr. Ishii told us this last time, well, I'll just make the loan for you. I'll give it to you, and you can just pay me back. Is what he told us this last time, and we're like, are you serious about that? You're going to do that for us? And kind of not able to process that. What a blessing that will be. So we're still praying about it as well, but he wants to sell our land and that church land there. And the problem is we'd have to have money to put a building up on it. We'd have to do that on our own, in which right now we're just renting a place for the church. So we're still praying about it, but we're real excited about how God might use this in the future to be able to build a building here on this piece of property so that we can have a church there. So that's our goal. That's what we're looking forward to in the future, and seeing more people come and get a bigger space that more people, we can teach English as well and reach more people with the gospel there in Japan. So I'm just going to end here. I know we want to take some questions up. I went through lots of different things. Maybe if you have questions about culture, questions about our work, or anything at all. Anyone have a question? Yes, sir.
Two questions. You had mentioned in your presentation that the Japanese people want to stay away from you because you're a missionary, or are they telling you because you're an American?
Most of the time, they don't know I'm a missionary right away. They're not opposed to me being a missionary. They don't necessarily want to stay away from you, but is when they find out that you are a Christian and you try to witness to them at all, then they're just very much standoffish, like, don't talk to me. In our area in particular, they're not very friendly or not outgoing at all. So they will not come up and talk to you like here. I mean, just anyone talks to us here. We're at the grocery store and the cashier is like, talking about things in their life and our life, and they don't do that there at all. So very just stay to themselves kind of thing, but especially they put up a wall there when they find that you're a Christian.
Next question is, what do the Japanese people believe when they die? What happens?
When they die, they think they believe in reincarnation for one thing, and so, but they follow a system that after they die, they start this journey, and based on kind of how they lived, kind of thing, it works, kind of thing, and what their family does, they're going to roam the earth for 7 years as a spirit, and eventually get to heaven. They do kind of teach a little bit, kind of like a purgatory kind of thing, and the Japanese priest, the Buddhist priest they have on the funerals can get very expensive in Japan for the Japanese, based on basically how much money you have, and they think you can get out of you. The Buddhist priest has this piece of wood, a stick that he will write a name on, and that name can cost to $10,000 or more, based on, and we know of people that have done that, and so they think the more that you give to that will help them get to heaven quicker, but by and large, most Japanese don't think about it at all. They don't think about what's going to happen after death, and they don't want to think about it, and they stay away from it altogether.
Well, you mentioned that they believe that you can go to heaven. Now, what is their definition of heaven?
They don't know what heaven is. It's definitely not what you and I think of heaven, and that's a good question. I should ask Brother Takagi about that. What do they think about heaven? I don't know. I'm not sure what exactly they say. Do you know, April? Yeah, there's no definite thought there. And I don't think that Buddhism necessarily teaches a specific thing of this is what heaven is like. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm curious if you have any unintended kind of government restrictions or anything like that?
No. Yeah, it's freedom of religion was established after World War II, so that has been set in place. It's not changed at all, so we have no problem there whatsoever. Thank the Lord for that. Any other questions? How is what? The weather. Okay, so depending where you are in Japan, so you have up like weather like Maine all the way to southern Florida. Japan is very long, and it's got islands, of course, down in the south, so it can be all kinds of different weather. We are in the middle, so we're kind of On the same latitude line as, or is it the equator line as Tennessee. So we got that kind of weather, but we're up in the mountains more, so we still get snow several times a year. Actually, we're getting snow now in Japan while you're not here. I guess you're having warmer weather here. Yeah. If you remember, the Winter Olympics in '98 was in Nagano Prefecture. That was our prefecture. So we got some really nice mountains, nice skiing places as well. Yes, sir, do you have another question?
When you said the church, you showed the example of Pastor Rich being there, and you said the church was being nationalized. What exactly do you mean by that?
Nationalized being a Japanese pastor is the pastor of that church now. So that's nationalized. The work has been turned over to him, and he's continuing that work there in Tokyo.
So it's not like I've heard of like nationalizing churches with cults in communist countries. It's kind of
No. Not like that. They don't have, that's communism, which is not, Japan's socialistic, but it's not communist, thankfully. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
With the cultural challenges that you mentioned and their people's hesitancy to reach out once they know that they're Christian, how can you bypass that witnessing other than the tracts that you hand out? And part two of my question,
Mm-hmm.
could you briefly explain Shintoism?
Okay. So it's difficult to get past like the initial barrier. So oftentimes having any way where you can begin a relationship somehow, like we said, through English, even if you can just through friends or through neighbors, be able to have a connection in some way. So it opens up a door. Because Japanese feel like if you don't have any connection, you don't talk to or don't deal with anybody else. And so, especially in our area, that's really important. Just trying to be really friendly, trying to be outgoing, talk to people, even though that's not their culture necessarily, but for us as missionaries, it's okay because they understand, these people are different anyway. And we're always going to be seen as foreigners, and that's what they call us. Gaijin is the word, and gaijin, there's a gaijin, there's a gaijin. And even a Japanese person who isn't from that area, moves from a different area of Japan, they'll call him a gaijin. And he's a foreigner, and they won't receive him very well. I mean, my language teacher, he said the way that the Japanese language is and how they speak to me, even though he's lived in that area, he wasn't from that area originally. He moved there, and he was there for some 30 some odd years. He said they still kind of speak to me like a foreigner, like I'm an outsider. So it just takes a lot of time. And showing a testimony has been one of the greatest things, I think, outreach-wise, showing them this is how a godly family is and how we relate to each other. We talk to each other. We show love. We help one another. We help other people and show love to them. We give forgiveness, which is very much not learned very well in Japan, forgiveness. All these kinds of things help them to understand there's something different about them and that they want. And so when you can establish a relationship and then start talking with them and fellowshipping with them, then they can see that. Shintoism, it's very hard to differentiate between Buddhism and Shintoism. And if you ask most Japanese, they'll be like, I don't know. And I've asked them before, what's the difference between Shintoism and Buddhism? If you go study it, the education-wise, there is differences there, but most Japanese don't know what the difference is. They just say, this is a Shinto festival, this is a Buddhist festival, but they still go to both. And it doesn't really mean anything to them. Shintoism focuses more on different objects and things being gods, like there's a god in this tree, so you see like a rope wrapped around the tree with different prayers on it and different things like that. Buddhism can tend to be a little bit more structural. We'll have a temple and they'll have people that can go to the temple and even get taught there if they want, and different things like that. Yeah, that's the short answer. Okay, thank you. Yeah, our time is